Welcome to Slope Reliability, the show where we learn about reliability, observability, and resilience one day at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slope Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and this is the show where we learn about reliability and observability and tech leadership and all kinds of goodness 1 or 2 weeks at a time. Today, I'm joined by Jacob Leverich. He's the co-founder and CTO of Observe Inc., an AI-powered observability company. Prior to Observe, he directed engineering at Splunk, was co-founder of Kuro Labs, and worked on Google's MapReduce team. Jacob earned his PhD at Stanford University, where he focused on computer systems design, data center power efficiency, distributed processing, memory systems, and parallel architectures. How are you going today, Jacob?
Doing pretty good. That was a mouthful.
Did you write that, or did someone else write that for you?
It was probably someone from our team, but that's okay. That kind of captures some of the highlights, but hopefully we can dive into the interesting parts in a minute. Yeah.
My takeaway is that you know a lot about a lot of things that I don't know much about. So it's probably good you're here.
It's like the classic T shape, right? Yeah.
So I know, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we caught up, the show isn't about particular products or even necessarily technologies. It's more about people and experiences. But I am curious. You've founded a company, Observe Inc., and so clearly at some point in your life there was some problem or some situation or experience which made you think there's something there's a gap that needs filling. You want to tell us a little bit about how did you come about founding Observe?
No, it's a good question, and sort of, I guess, sometimes I reflect on this myself, like, why on earth am I doing this? It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of commitment, and there's a lot that goes into it. And so, like, kind of what were the things that kind of led me to, wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to do this company and do a company in this space, and kind of a lot of these things kind of all come together in a way. So, so I'm co-founder, CTO. I guess day job these days is to be the outward-facing co-founder. I spend a lot of time talking with customers and investors, and really just connecting the dots between the technology we've built and sort of the value it can provide, the outcomes. But when we started, I was just the head of engineering. So I hired the original engineering team, kind of bootstrapped backlog, got our initial alpha out the door, just kind of really getting all the gears turning. And so over time, find myself in that more outward-facing sort of, I guess, strategy role. But I guess so what led me to want to really do this, and sort of what about my background sort of made this the right thing to do? So you mentioned this a second ago. Before Observe, I was an engineer at Splunk. So I was an engineer on the core search engine, just banging out C++ code, scaling out to bigger and better use cases. That was a really good experience. I have a lot of great things to say about that product, about the company, about the customers, the use cases. I mean, it was a really good experience. I left in 2017, so I can't speak to anything after that point, but kind of it was really, really good. I guess it was a first kind of like B2B experience where I really started to finally see how the pieces clicked for the technology they were building and the problem it solved for customers. Like, why on earth would someone pay, $50,000, $100,000, $1 million for software like this? Like, why on earth could it possibly be that valuable? And I'll explain it just in a second. So, going backwards from Splunk, I spent time at HP Labs, spent time at IBM, spent time at Google, did the whole grad school thing. None of it matters. so the thing that actually matters, kind of to this present context, is when I started my career. Late 90s, early 2000s, I was a Linux sysadmin, just banging out mountains of Perl scripts to monitor and maintain small fleets of servers, and manage servers in colo facilities, wore alphanumeric pager, all that sort of stuff. So I was kind of living the dream, the sysadmin dream, sort of in the 90s, working, with actually small companies, small kind of companies in the dot-com era. So I've always had that startup bug, which is certainly relevant now. But I guess my experience when I got to Splunk was just realization, holy crap, if I'd had this software when I was a practitioner, I would have been way better at my job as a sysadmin. It would have been less of me home growing all of ththese Perl scripts to analyze our logs and to do alerts with cron jobs and like all this sort of stuff. Like if I actually had a proper tool that like solved the hard technical challenges of bringing all this data together, then great, I could actually do a better job at that part of it, of the story, and kind of the reliability and scalability and, kind of maintainability of it all. But then also, as I began to just appreciate like how important of like a business process that software like this kind of fulfills or satisfies. Like when you have like a team of people working to keep like critical digital infrastructure up, and when things go bump at 2 a.m, and you're all trying to figure out like what happened, it can be very, very valuable to have just sort of like a trusted repository for all of the like relevant telemetry data, to have everyone sort of receive, the alert, to be able to look at the same dashboards, to collaborate, to troubleshoot something. And I guess it was kind of just experiencing this like on the vendor side that just really helped me appreciate that like, hey, we make all this technology not just for the sake of, I guess, the technical puzzles to solve, but like it really does fulfill an important sort of duty and role for companies with, kind of digital infrastructure at the core of their business, which is everyone these days, right? Everyone sort of, it's sort of some sort of aspect of their business that runs on some digital operation. And so I think just from the entrepreneurship side of things, I'd always had a startup itch just from being born in the .com era, at least professionally. But I think the other things that like came together is like the hard technical challenges. Like I'm an engineer and tinkerer at heart, and so being able to like really kind of invest myself in the technology, which is a very hard problem to solve with observability, because the volume of data that you deal with and the urgency at which people need alerts to be delivered and be able to interrogate it, like that's like, it's actually a very, very hard technical challenge. And so that's fun. I can work on that stuff all my whole life. But then also to like have a use case, like a domain, where it's like something that like I personally feel like what our like customers like feel, like in terms of, I cannot do my job unless I have access to the data that helps me troubleshoot my systems when things go down. And there's even just the emotional feeling of like, this is a high stakes scenario. Yeah. I want to do what's best for the business. And so that means like, I need a system to work and to like have this data and to make it easy for me to fulfill my responsibilities in a situation like that. It's very easy to have empathy for customers like that. I think partially because like it's a job that I used to do and frankly still do, because we also run a digital operation, and we have our own incidents and we use our own software to like kind of to troubleshoot them. And so it's very motivating to work on something that like you viscerally understand, and you can have like a very direct conversation with the customers about like the responsibility you would like to take on for them. But then also like it's a market that I guess, as we've been describing, it's like a pretty core critical infrastructure for anyone to have like a system of record for all their telemetry data, to have this trusted repository of the data, something that they can use when they're troubleshooting things in like, these minor crises. And so it's not really like discretionary spend, I guess. It's sort of like, it's like kind of like common, practice to like reason about like, hey, 5 to 10% of your like infrastructure sort of budget should be devoted to like the monitoring and observability solution. And so it's just sort of like a core part of doing business these days. And so that's a fine place to I guess build a business. Just like thinking about it, these three things come together. It's like cool technology, great, scratches all of my itches as curiosity as a software engineer or whatever. Empathy for the use case. Yeah, like I would love to help. Sorry, the balloons just flew by. Distracted me.
Is it got a Mac? Because I think Macs do that sometimes. Yeah,
I guess so. It must be built through the camera. I turn that thing off. But yeah, just like kind of empathy and passion for like users in this scenario, and then like a place where people actually allocate budget. Like if you can build a solution that satisfies sort of these needs that people have in this high stakes monitoring, then there's actually a great market to be a part of. And so those are kind of things that sort of, I guess, led me to like really like kind of believing that this is something that was for me.
When we caught up a couple of weeks ago, you were mentioning the particular use case. And I know I'm narrowing a little bit in on Observability, but I found it interesting. So you're at Splunk and you saw this sort of problem of the volume of data is just astronomical and it's just growing and growing and growing that we need to store. How do we store it in a way which we can still access it quickly and effectively? And you were initially looking at that problem, and then you sort of discovered, hey, actually the storage of how we store that data and the infrastructure behind it is kind of been solved, but there was still another problem which you've gone on to solve. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Oh, that's close. It hadn't been solved at the time, at least not by Splunk. But I think that we could see the writing on the wall, and I can paint that story just a little bit. So I mean, so I was, say 2017, I'm an engineer at Splunk, working on some of the most interesting problems there, because they're kind of dealing with a company that is scaling, quite rapidly, has very, very large customers, and for whom that, we handle very, very large volumes of data, very kind of, critical use cases, whether it's IT ops or security or application monitoring. And, kind of as a result of just the challenges we were facing building a thing out to scale, I mean, we kind of had a pretty extensive and actually quite exciting, kind of technical roadmap for what are the next steps we need to take in this architecture to meet the needs of these larger customers. And for what it's worth, just Splunk, kind of originally engineered in the early 2000s. And so a lot of the technology was built prior to the cloud era, prior to S3 being this infinitely scalable, durable storage that you can rely upon for a system like this. And so largely relying upon local disks and handling its own durability story with data replication and stuff like that, which is fine. That's how all databases were kind of built back then. But there's kind of two maybe key experiences that I kind of had that informed my worldview that actually there's a different and perhaps better way to do this. So one was, I guess back when I was at Google, I was working on the MapReduce team, but really what I did day in, day out was more performance engineering and performance analysis work. And the tool that I used to do that was something called Dremel, which was basically Google's internal log management system. So in 2010, they have this system. It eventually became the backend for BigQuery. So it's kind of the pedigree of BigQuery. And it's a big scale out columnar analytics database with separation of storage to compute. So all of the data is stored in, kind of their object storage, and has, great support for semi-structured data. So kind of, you can think JSON type data. It's the type of data this thing could do analytics on, and was a columnar analytics database. And so for doing just sort of time-based rollups of response time by this and that attribute, it's the kind of thing that it could do very, very good analytics on. And so I had this exposure to that system a long time ago, and kind of, in a sense, kind of had this insight into how do hyperscalers solve sort of this vast volume of telemetry data problem, and how do they do it economically? How do they do it in a way that scales out and can handle very, very large data volumes and query workloads and stuff like that? And so when I was kind of thinking through hey, what's our roadmap at Splunk? All of it was largely compatible. It was yes, if we keep building along our roadmap, it's eventually going to look like Dremel, and that'll be good. That actually is kind of the direction that this stuff is going, and sort of just the I guess how one does large scale data management for semi-structured data, kind of in late 2010s. So along that time, I had this second experience. I think it actually kind of actually made it why is now the right time to actually tackle this problem and sort of bring it to broader market, is that I had a chance meeting with folks from Snowflake. As happens at these kind of companies, every once in a while you get a meeting of the minds. And so we had this really interesting opportunity where it was me and the chief architect at Splunk meeting with Benoit and Thierry, and Allison from Snowflake. So the two co-founders are the head of their compiler, and really just talking about the technology and partnership opportunities, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that was actually most eye-opening is that when I was preparing for that meeting, I read the Snowflake SIGMOD paper like their conference paper they published in 2016, where they described the architecture of Snowflake, and they describe how they do metadata management, how they do micro-partitioning of data, how they do columnar storage of semi-structured data, separation of storage and compute, all this sort of stuff. And it just dawned on me, like, oh my God, these guys have actually built our roadmap at Splunk. Like, they've already built out all of the things that we saw as gaps, like kind of in our solution, and the things that we think we need to build in order to support like kind of the next generation of like large scale, use cases from the, kind of larger enterprise customers. And simultaneously, it's like, I already kind of knew that this was the right answer, because this is the answer, that kind of Google had in 2010 for the same use case. And to now see it in the form of a commercial off-the-shelf database, it was sort of like an interesting moment of reflection on, well, where is this industry going? So I think prior to that point, every company that kind of come into the monitoring observability space had built a custom, data management system shaped around like very like specific types of data. Splunk and Elastic, they're, kind of and a whole bunch of others building, data management systems, very hyper specialized for log data and the log search use case. Not being quite as strong at analytics use cases and dashboarding and reporting, but like kind of still handling the keyword search use case very well. Then we saw, a bunch of other vendors building time series databases for like kind of regularly reported metrics data. And, that could be, like Datadog and others kind of building in kind of like very specific, like metric modality of data, which, the metrics data, like it's great, but like, just the architecture of the system that stores the metrics data, you don't want it to be too high cardinality. The whole system explodes if there's very high cardinality. And so it kind of doesn't really work outside of just metrics data. And I guess the realization was like, hey, everyone to date has built very, very specialized engines for very specific types of data for very specific use cases. But the problem that people face these days is that, well, I can't do my whole digital, operations monitoring with just my logs, and I can't do it with just my metrics, and I can't do it with just my APM data, and I can't do it with just my security analytics, like, my SIM or whatever. Like, I actually have like a lot of different needs, and to have like a whole constellation of best in breed tools, it actually makes it really hard to troubleshoot, because now I have to train a whole bunch of people to work with a whole bunch of different pieces of software to, basically end up with like a lot of specialization, and sort of it gets in the way of what I kind of described a second ago as like this business process of like getting everyone on the same page to troubleshoot the same problem. And so I guess the perspective was, with this new breed of like large scale, a data management system for semi-structured data, it's a perfect substrate to actually begin to tackle these data problems, and to actually, start to I guess, bring more and more of this data together. Because they have such great support for semi-structured data, they actually works very, very well for both log data and for metrics data and for distributed tracing data, because all of like the labels associated with metrics and the attributes associated with traces, they're all just kind of JSON blobs at the end of the day. And so if you have a system that's very, very good at handling those JSON blobs, then you can kind of throw it all in there in the same place. It also, these newer data management systems are basically SQL databases. And so a lot of the types of correlations and analytics you want to do with this data, they end up just looking like SQL joins. And so these systems are very, very capable at doing that kind of analysis. And so it just seemed to be the case that like the way that the industry was going in terms of the capabilities of these generic off-the-shelf data management systems, as well as the challenges that were being faced by people doing very, very large, kind of observability monitoring systems, there was an industry convergence that was going to happen. And so we kind of saw it as our role to sort of like, I guess, connect the dots, because like at the end of the day, like, just because you have this big SQL database doesn't actually solve a problem for anyone.
Yeah.
You actually have to kind of meet a user where they are. Like, what data do you have? And like, what agentry do you have for data collection? How do you load it into a big data warehouse with good economics and good timeliness? Because it's not a reporting use case, it's a real-time analytics use case. So like, you expect like, on the order of like 10, to 15 seconds of latency to get data in. That's not normally how you use an analytics database. You expect queries to be like super interactive. You expect to be able to just kind of iterate on your analysis, whether you're kind of looking at different time ranges in a dashboard or kind of preparing data for dashboarding. And so like there's kind of all these.
You want to eat it as well, you want it all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think I think we just kind of took it upon ourselves to try to do the impedance matching between like where the long-term technology trend for data management was going, but then the needs of like people that were, working in this more real-time sort of monitoring observability sort of use case, kind of what their pain points were. So anyway, so that's a little bit of the story on sort of like, like what were some of the challenges that we saw and kind of where we, kind of how we tried to make the match.
So are you saying that we can have a situation where all data that we need for those situations where we're trying to solve a problem under intense stress and pressure, is all that data stored, can it be stored in one place? Or are you saying it needs to be stored in different ways in different locations? And the problem is now, how can we consolidate the ability to go out and use that data and explore that data? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. And I think that, the way, I guess one way to think about this as like, as an entrepreneurial endeavor is, you're never at the destination. There's kind of like, you're always like kind of striving for something. And so I don't think that, I'm not sure that there will ever, practically speaking, be a situation where like absolutely everything is in one place with a single copy and like, every is used, but I think that there's a trend, there's a natural like desire and trend towards an outcome that looks like that. And I would say that we're kind of on a journey to get there. And I think what we'd like to think is that whether we do this or whether someone else does it, like there's a general industry trend towards, I guess, having like a one, data lake repository for or storage for all of one's observability data. And I think one part of this is like, is it technically feasible to like do this? And my answer, I think, would be yes. What we've done with what we've able to prove that you can do with something like Snowflake, I think kind of proves, makes the hard case that yes, you can load hundreds of terabytes per day or petabytes per day of this type of telemetry data into a single sort of object storage backed data management system and achieve amazingly good economics, very, very good retention for all this data. So you can use it for all sorts of different reporting and compliance like use cases in addition to real-time use cases. And then also make it perfectly effective for supporting thousands of users doing real-time telemetry use cases. We've managed to do that on top of Snowflake. And so that's a nice like existence proof that this stuff can happen. Now, I think the one hesitation that people might have about that is like, okay, great, it's all in Snowflake, but like, maybe I'm a Databricks shop, like, or like whatever. And so I think it's not the perfect answer, like kind of like just future wise to like kind of still have things in this one database. And so what we now see is with, with kind of data lake houses and at the end of the day, these open table formats for columnar analytics data. So like Iceberg being a really great example of this. We believe that you can actually do everything that we're doing today with Snowflake, but you can do it on top of open table formats like Iceberg and achieve all of these same outcomes in terms of the scale and the economics and the ability to handle real-time data as well as doing like long-term reporting use cases. There's so much like similarity between Iceberg and Snowflake's internal format, and for it's worth all the benchmarking we've been doing ourselves to kind of prove that yes, this is the case. And we now have customers where we are moving their data to Iceberg, and they're sort of everything just like works perfectly. Now, the really interesting difference when you start using these open table formats is that you can just store the data in the customer's own S3 bucket, like in their own object storage. And so now you're living in this like very interesting kind of future world where it's like, yeah, you have like hundreds of terabytes of this observability data. In prior like sort of I guess generations of tool, you would be worried about like, oh yeah, it all gets stored in this proprietary database, and like that's I pay a ton of money for it, and I can't even get the data back out. It's kind of real. You kind of almost feel like you're held hostage. But if the data is stored in an open format in someone's own object storage, then it's kind of like what is our role as a vendor, or what is the role we believe for observability vendors in the future? It's not to like take that data hostage and hold it in their own data management system. It's to help customers consolidate this data into this single repository. It's to help customers have like open access to that data, so they can use it for whatever purpose makes sense for them. And I think, the more and more like we talk to large companies and they think about their future data management strategy, like they want to get to a world where they have ownership and governance over their data. They want all the data to be in open formats. They want there to be an ecosystem of vendors that can either supply data to that data lakehouse or consume data from that data lakehouse. And so I don't think that that's necessarily like a full-on reality for people today. But we see that that's kind of, well, at least I see that that's like kind of the future direction that a lot of this stuff is going. And I guess and that's not only like when we hear from our customers, but also like that's like kind of what I feel in my own soul. Is it like me, like I don't want to bring in tools that sort of hold this data hostage. I don't want tools that like are very, very bespoke and like so prescriptively opinionated about a use case that I can't do other things with this data. I do kind of feel like, when you're dealing with like terabytes and terabytes of this operational data, like I probably have tons of other things that I want to do with that data. And so just like, please give me the autonomy to do that. And so like, I think that I kind of just personally feel like this is, it's when customers ask me for this, like, it's very easy for me to like, just again, have that empathy with them. And just sort of like, say like, yeah, actually, where you want to go is where I want to go too. And so that's where we're going to take the company. So
I think it's a worthy mindset. I think, I don't know, I'm probably projecting, but I see other vendors going completely the other way. They're very bespoke solutions and your data is trapped with them. Very hard to change vendors unless you've built yourself a way where you've got your own data lake and you can then, you've got your own copy of that data somewhere. But yeah,
totally. Yeah.
Thinking 15 years ago, going way back into primitive times, I used to do performance engineering and testing, and I used to do performance tests maybe every day, and I might be collecting, 100 megs, a couple hundred megs of data at most, and I at that time I would just be pushing this stuff. I'd be turning flat files into SQL Server or Postgres or MariaDB or something, and then just I connect to using Tableau, which is a data analytics. That's how I do my analysis, right? And I ran into these constant performance issues, not for one test, but when you've got a history of 100 or 200 tests, it becomes slow. And I'd be looking at indexes now. I don't know, I'd be quite excited if I was to go back into that hands-on performance testing role again, to leverage some of the new tech that's out now and be able to build something which is just so much better performing and easier to manage.
100%. I was even, when you just mentioned that, I was thinking, I was in grad school, it's like I was doing work in computer architecture. So I was doing tons and tons of simulations of these chip multiprocessors and getting like out memory traces from these jobs. And the only tools I knew how to work with at the time were, Perl. Right, so mountains of Perl scripts to like analyze all of these like these traces of runs and just kind of build the reports off of them. And so it would take almost as long to run the Perl script as it would to run like the cycle accurate simulator for this microprocessor. And then the only other tool I like kind of had at my disposal was Hadoop. Just like write MapReduce jobs. And I was like, man, I can't be bothered to do this. This is like way too much work to do like very simple counting and aggregates. And so. Yeah, but like it hadn't really been, I guess, at least analytics databases that I guess they were available for that, kind of just open, I guess, academic, use at the time that Lisa is aware of. So it's kind of, it's very empowering to have like these data analytic capabilities at one's fingertips. And I think yeah, very much like kind of what you just mentioned, like it would be, kind of, it'd be great to like have these new databases, kind of available. I guess it would, like, there's a way I've always thought about this is like, there is this amazing technology that's being built in the data, the BI space. There's amazing technology being built for AI, and not just like building these LLMs, but just like the analytics that goes behind those, and kind of analyzing, just, all the different, even user interactions that people have with this stuff. And I think what's a shame is that a lot of this technology and a lot of this, like these techniques haven't yet trickled down to like, to either software engineering teams that have their own data analytic needs, or even just like IT ops and security, analysis teams. Like, they're kind of like beholden to, just proprietary, very bespoke, best of breed tools. But like they have, lots of dashboards that they want to build, lots of custom analytics they want to do. And so I almost just feel like, our task is like, or at least my calling in life is to like take all this great technology that's happening over in the BI space and sort of bring it to everyone else, and to kind of like let, hey, you, Mr. VP of engineering, or you, Mr. CTO, like you have at your fingertips some really amazing data analysis technology. Let me make it easy for you to adopt it and to use it and to get value out of it. Think about it that way. Yeah.
We are coming closer to time, but I did want to ask one completely different question before we go. So obviously I'm very invested in learning about leadership and technology, and people and all the, I'm really interested in that stuff right now. And I can't think of a stronger, more sort of intense leadership situation than co-founding a company and then leading that company. And you've been going for 8 years now, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, have you like made mistakes over the years that you've learned from and thought, wow, I was leading this particular way, or I dealt with these particular situations in this way, and I've learned, actually, that's just not helpful. I'll do it a different way now. Have you got any like lessons related to that, your experiences?
Oh my God, I have so many. Like where are we good? How do I protect my own like ego? But like, I guess just maybe when you ask that question, there's like a couple of things that come to mind for me right away. So one was just sort of, I think, going into like entrepreneurship or leadership with like maybe a realistic mindset, and so I'll give you like one example is. I told a close friend of mine, like, hey, I think I'm going to do this startup thing. And I told him, all the passion I've kind of shared on this call about the technology and the people and the empathy for the user and kind of the market opportunity and all that sort of stuff. So I was very, very excited about this stuff. And then he was just like, hey, dude, you realize like it's pretty hard to do a startup, right? And I think that I had the rose-colored glasses on, and I was kind of thinking through like all of like just like the really, really kind of fun like part of this stuff and the kind of the unique opportunity and all that kind of stuff. But then before like really deciding to jump into this, I did just like slow down for one moment and just think to myself like, oh yeah, it is pretty hard. What do I know about that? I had seen other friends, kind of build startups and kind of to varying degrees of success and varying degrees of failure, and sort of like just kind of the whole journey that goes along with that. And then I also was just thinking about like building like an enterprise B2B company specifically. Like it's not something that typically happens overnight. Like it takes a while to really build the technology, and it takes a while to really build the go-to-market sort of motion, and to really find sort of like your corner of the market and all that kind of stuff. And so, kind of when you ask me this question, it's like, like, hey man, you know that this is really hard, right? I was like, I thought about it. I was like, if we're going to do this, I think it's going to take 10 years. That was kind of just like my realistic assessment of the situation. It's like, I think it'll take 10 years to like really put all the pieces together to really get to like success. And I think maybe the mindset is like, it's not enough to just like bring the band together and to build some technology and put up a web page and call it done. Like you have to follow through. and you have to actually like sell the software, and you have to support the software, and you have to like really get all those things together. And so it's like 10 years, and so the question I asked myself was like, do I think I could sit down and devote myself to something like this for 10 years? And the conclusion I came to was, I think I can. I think that I can actually see myself sitting down and really just like step by step, brick by brick, going through this process. And so that's when I decided, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go get a Series A. We're gonna build this business. But I think if I hadn't done that, and if I hadn't like come to some like objective like assessment of like what this is going to mean to actually do the thing and what it's actually going to require of me, I think I would have like tapped out like 5 years ago, because it gets hard.
and like 10 years is a long time, right? I mean, the longest job was about 5.5 years before I changed jobs. This podcast has been going for less than 4 years, and it feels like an eternity. Like 10 years is a long time.
It's a long time, but I think it was just the reality of like building an enterprise B2B business and sort of just kind of knowing the folks that I've known that have like actually seen it all the way through. So that was like kind of one part of it, was like just like coming into it with like just a full appreciation of like how much effort I'm gonna have to bring to it, and then that's gonna help me just stay grounded over time. It's just like, hey, this is hard, but it's like actually no harder than I really expected it to be. Now the second thing that came to mind when you mentioned this question is like, sort of what are some of the kind of hard, I guess just like leadership lessons along the way.
Yeah.
I think when we first started, I don't know, I guess I was kind of took pride in like sort of doing things and like kind of being very hands-on. I'm kind of an engineer at heart, so I kind of just want like, give me a problem and I'll go off and solve it, and so I always just kind of leapt to things and kind of took ownership on as many things as needed solving, because that's what we needed to do. And I think at some point everyone sort of realizes like you cannot do that. Like not only are you going to fail, like everyone around you is going to fail too, because now you're sort of like you're making the expectation that like you're going to take responsibility for this. You're never really giving people their own opportunity to take ownership on things, and there's just a point at which you have to start like learning to like let go. And sort of just like start to trust people and to spend like serious effort on bringing the right people to the team and empowering them to like kind of just own things. And so, as much as my original sort of ego and identity was tied up around like, hey, I'm going to spend 10 years, I'm going to make this whole goddamn thing successful. Over time, it sort of turns into, no, actually, my job now is to just like make sure that people understand sort of the big picture, make sure they understand the opportunities ahead of us, make sure that it's pretty clear kind of what their role is to play, and then to give them, kind of the support they need if they're stuck, but to otherwise kind of give them the autonomy and the responsibility and the ownership, and to give them the opportunity to grow into that stuff. And I guess it's the easiest like mental like kind of mental sort of trick I kind of use to just kind of stay on that footing is to like always bring the conversation back to, what does this customer need to succeed? Like that, like any conversation we have, it's like, hey, like we're trying to solve a problem for someone. They have like something going on in their business. There's something they need a solution for. What can we do today to like make them successful? And once I kind of frame things that way, even for myself, I always like finally come to the realization. It's like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter if I solve their problem. I just need to make sure that they get the best solution possible. Yeah. And if that means like bringing someone else to the table who can devote themselves to their problem, then my job is done. And I think there's just like a lot of like learning and growth like through going into more and more kind of leadership roles, is to kind of like take more and more of like I and me out of the equation, and to just focus on, well, why are we here at all? And let's just like kind of make sure that that's always the top of our mind, and make sure everyone else sort of appreciates like why we're all here and can align to that.
Reflecting on one of the things you just said, I think there's a lesson for me. I've been quite good, I think, at giving people autonomy, but maybe I haven't been setting clear enough expectations as well. We actually need to get this done and do these things. I probably give people too much space with a sort of more vague vision than I should,
Well, there's there's like what is it from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's this concept of stewardship. Like what's it called? Empowered stewardship or something like that. It's basically like you don't hand them directions, like hand them like stewardship of a problem, and then like kind of if you can frame it around like work, I guess work within these constraints. Otherwise, do whatever you need to do to like own this problem. Whenever I find myself like struggling to figure out kind of something like that, it's like I give people squishy directions, but I haven't really empowered them yet. I sometimes just fall back to that, and it's sort of like there's a checklist, and it's sort of like, okay, if I can answer these 5 questions, then hopefully I can bring clarity to the like shared, like the distinct responsibilities that I have versus they have. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for your generosity and taking time to chat not only about tech but leadership. We've packed a lot into a small episode. Hope you enjoyed your conversation.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's been really fun, and I hope your audience gets something out of it. So thank you so much for your time.
What's happening in your world in the next few months?
Oh man, I mean, I guess we just wrapped up Q3. We beat the numbers for the year, and so now it's just onward to bigger and better things. We get to blow out the year with Q4. So I think it's just getting excited about all the customer use cases we're tackling right now. And then, end of years is always fun. We have our holiday parties. So we have the whole company flying in for a big dinner this Saturday. And so, we're like 50-50, like local and remote. And so just like kind of the chance to get everyone together and to, share some beers and share some tears, very much looking forward to that.
Our Christmas party is on December 17th, the latest that's ever happened. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
But right thanks again for chatting today. And to everyone else out there, hope you have a wonderful week. And I'll see you next time.